Whoa, I can watch The Devil's Rejects and the Saw films without so much as a wince, but this film actually made me uncomfortable. So in the late 1960s, racial tensions in America between blacks and whites were at a pretty dangerous precipice. White Americans enjoyed a good standard of living in the suburbs, while blacks continued to be segregated into the cramped, poor living conditions of the inner cities. Eventually, the anger escalated into a series of riots, with Detroit sustaining the highest level of damage and casualties. Kathryn Bigelow's film Detroit puts an emphasis on a harrowing incident during the riots in which 3 young unarmed black men were killed during a police raid on the Algiers motel. So as the straw that broke the camel's back, a Detroit PD raid on an unlicensed bar serving liquor to returned black Vietnam veterans sparks the riot. Violent actions on both sides escalate to the point where the US Army and the National Guard are called in to quell the situation. Enter Larry Reed, played by Algie Smith, the lead singer of an R&B group called The Dramatics. His possible breakthrough performance gets cancelled as the riots get closer to the venue. After their bus is flocked by rioters, Larry and his friend end up renting a room at the Algiers motel. At a party there, they flirt with 2 white girls, Julie and Karen, played by Hannah Murray and Caitlin Dever. And then a prank involving a fake startup pistol alerts the police, who mistake the sounds for sniper fire. Shortly afterwards, the police storm the motel, force everyone against the wall, and start interrogating them in a horrifically brutal manner. Detroit plays like a home invasion type horror thriller flick for the majority of its 2-hour and 22-minute runtime. These horror elements resonate strongly on account of the fact that they're based off of events that happen in real life. I'm telling you, the shit that goes down at the Algiers motel is one of the ghastliest examples of police racism and brutality to ever be committed to celluloid. And director Kathryn Bigelow once again demonstrates her undisputed aptitude at gritty, unnerving, and utterly impactful filmmaking. Just like the smothering constriction of being held at gunpoint, terrorized, and threatened with death, she succeeds with flying colors in generating an unmitigated sense of claustrophobia and extreme dread to an utterly suffocating degree. The sheer precision of the handheld camera work and realistic sound editing ups the tension factor all the way to 11 and transports the viewer directly into the perspectives of that dreadful night's victims. And this allows the apprehension felt by the victims to be a whole lot more palpable. My knuckles were ghost white as I leaned forward towards the screen with mile-wide open eyes and my fists clenched in anger at the ever-sinking depths of human depravity. And of course, you can't have an effective depiction of a murky point in American history without Class A performances, right? The entire cast works as a whole in making this film feel as realistic as possible because every last one of them brought their A game and then some. However, there were 2 performances from this incredible cast that stood out for me. The first one is Will Poulter playing Philip Krause, the vile, murderous, and utterly racist police officer who led the raid on the Algiers motel. Coming a long way from Narnia, this son of a bitch is the kind of asshole who plants knives on unarmed black men he killed in order to make it look like he was defending himself from aggression. He's got the kind of presence that'll instantly raise your doubts about your chances of survival, with his decisions determining the fate of those who come into contact with him. Towering over his victims, he is the flesh and bone manifestation of state barbarity that threatens the African-American population. John Boyega is the second standout for me. He plays Melvin Dismukes, a private security guard who was working alongside the police during the motel raid. He didn't have much to say, but his face conveyed a wide array of emotions. Most notably, his feelings regarding his constraints to help and what he witnessed that night. Angry yet restrained, worried but fully in control. While Detroit is exquisitely made, impeccably acted, gripping as an anaconda, and harrowing from start to finish, a few notable flaws prevent it from achieving true greatness. I think Detroit came off as a well-done condemnation of police racism, brutality, and the broken criminal justice system rather than a truly insightful piece of social commentary. This is primarily attributed to the fact that the film doesn't add much to the broader discussion that it's diving into. In my opinion, that horrific night at the Algiers motel, which comprises the majority of this film's runtime, brilliantly done as it is, isn't exactly the most efficient in covering the wider issues behind the Detroit riots. Prior to the looting and the incident at the Algiers motel, this film does try to establish a historical context for the riots using an animated prologue, but it comes off as a little heavy-handed. Additionally, I felt that the third act kind of rushed a bit through the aftermath and the ramifications of what had transpired via a climactic yet slightly undercooked courtroom drama. Detroit was headed in the right direction towards perfection, as I believe Kathryn Bigelow demonstrated a whole lot of objectivity by showing us all sorts of people across the spectrum through the course of the events. You know, good and bad from all sides. As a whole, the film would have benefited from some greater insight into the issues that precipitated the riots and a bit more of a refined handling of the consequences. Maybe by cutting out a bit of the second act and focusing that time into the first and third act along with their respective issues, we could have had a more complete product. And the second act wouldn't be repeatedly hammering us over the head with its prolonged display of police brutality. With such a hefty runtime, I definitely think that Detroit could have delved even deeper into its themes without undermining the shock value that it went for and delivered delivered so brilliantly. So in the end, Detroit is a very good film and I highly recommend it. Unsettling, powerful, and visceral, Detroit is a very important movie that highlights a dark and pretty recent chapter in our nation's history. Kathryn Bigelow demonstrates a strong command of her craft and the cast is just fantastic. Detroit is a strong reminder that racial hostility has no place in police work or society as a whole. And environments that overlook and condone such behavior turn human beings into fucking savages. So I'm gonna give Detroit a solid 8. So these are my thoughts on Detroit. What did you think of the film? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you like what I do, give me a like, hit that big subscribe button, stay tuned, and I will see you on the next one.